Why was the base so silent? Her boots pressed against the gravel, each step echoing in a place where sound should have lived, engines running, soldiers moving, radios chattering. But instead, silence. Heavy, suffocating. The kind of silence that carries weight like the air itself knows something. She walked through it without breaking stride. Her breath fogged in the cool night, her fingers tightening around the black case she carried. It wasn't large, but it wasn't small either. The kind of thing that could pass as nothing or everything. Eyes watched from the shadows, or maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just the ghosts that still lingered here in a base that once buzzed with life. She wasn't sure, not anymore. But she kept walking, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant drowning. She had promised herself, no drowning tonight. Her name was Captain Elena Vega, 32 years old, U.S. Army Intelligence Division. On paper, she was efficient, steady, a leader who could be trusted with delicate things. But paper doesn't bleed. Paper doesn't tell you how many nights she lay awake, staring at ceilings that belonged to barracks, cheap motels, or tents in the desert, wondering if her choices had ever been worth it. And now, here she was stepping into a place stripped of its own pulse. A place where she had once laughed, trained, and argued with people she might never see again. At the gate, the sentry post was empty. The floodlights still burned, casting long, pale streaks across the sand and asphalt, but no shadows moved within them. No guards, no vehicles parked in the usual crooked lines, nothing but stillness. She adjusted the strap of the case against her shoulder and whispered to herself, just enough for her own ears. Don't think, just walk. She crossed the threshold. Inside the operations building, the air was colder, sharper. The generator hummed, faint and distant. Lights flickered overhead, one of them buzzing with a dying bulb. The smell was wrong, too clean, like someone had scrubbed the walls but couldn't quite wash away what had been here before. And that was when she saw it, the first trace of them. A coffee cup overturned on the floor. The liquid had dried into a dark smear, long since abandoned. Next to it, a half-burnt photograph. A woman, two kids. Whoever had sat at this desk had left in a hurry or hadn't left at all. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to keep moving. She knew what these walls had seen. She just didn't know how much of it was still waiting for her. In her hand, the case grew heavier, not from weight, but from memory, because inside it was something that didn't belong to her, not fully. Something that had cost lives already and would cost more if she made one mistake tonight. The silence followed her into the command room. Screens still glowed dimly, frozen on maps and lines of encrypted chatter. Papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. And in the center of it all, one chair still turned as if someone had been sitting there seconds ago. But the seat was empty. Her chest rose and fell, quicker now. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. They told her someone would be here, someone to receive what she carried, someone who would know what to do with it, but there was no one, no voices, no footsteps, just that unbearable silence. She set the case down gently on the table, her palms damp against the metal clasps, and for a moment she just stood there, listening. Her heart beat too loud. Her ears strained for anything, the sound of boots in the hallway, the crackle of a radio, even the distant laugh of a soldier killing time. Nothing. She leaned on the table, her eyes closing against the weight of it, and that's when the memory returned, uninvited. The desert wind, the burning sky, the moment she had taken it, this case, this burden from a man who had been bleeding out, his voice hoarse and broken as he shoved it into her hands. Don't let it die here, he had said. She had promised. With blood on her gloves and grit in her teeth, she had promised him she would get it back, that his sacrifice wouldn't be for nothing. And now she was here, and there was no one to hand it to. Her promise hung in the air like smoke. She opened her eyes. The flickering light buzzed again, harsh and impatient. Elena straightened, forcing her body into the kind of posture that said she still believed in something, even if it was just momentum. And then a sound. Not much, not enough to call noise, but enough. A scuff against the floor, faint, careful. Her hand went to her sidearm before she thought twice. The weight of it steadied her, as if the weapon could give her control over the unknown. She turned toward the corridor, her breath shallow, her eyes sharp. Another sound, this time a whisper of fabric brushing against a wall. She aimed. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked, but not enough to betray her. No answer. Only the hum of the generator. Her grip tightened. She took a slow step forward, then another. And then she saw him. Not fully. Just a flash of movement, a shoulder slipping past a doorway, the pale outline of a face retreating into shadow. "Stop!" she shouted, the word tearing through the stillness. But the figure vanished. She stood frozen, pulse hammering. Whoever it was had chosen not to engage. That was either good news or very, very bad. She exhaled, steadying herself. She knew better than to chase. Instead, she went back to the table and placed her hand firmly on the case. It was hers to guard until she knew, until someone explained why this base, once alive, now felt like a mausoleum. And yet she couldn't shake the thought. Whoever had been here had seen her. They knew what she carried. And they hadn't taken it, not yet. The question chewed at her as the silence thickened again. Why? Why leave her with it? Why vanish instead of striking? She looked at the door one last time, then at the case. Her reflection stared back from the dull black surface, tired eyes, skin lined with the kind of years that happen too fast. She whispered to herself again, this time softer. Don't drown, just move. But deep down she knew the truth. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. And whatever it was waiting for, she had just stepped into the center of it. What kind of silence breathes back at you? Elena stood still, her hand pressed against the case, her weapon still warm in her grip. It wasn't empty here. She could feel it. The kind of presence that doesn't announce itself, it just lingers, patient, watching. Her training told her to move, to sweep the halls, to secure the building. But her gut said something else. Wait, listen, don't give them what they want. So she listened. At first, only the hum of the generator. Then, like a thread pulling loose, a faint clicking noise. Metal against metal, not steady, hesitant. Almost like someone's breath caught in their throat, trying not to be heard. She turned toward the sound, her finger brushing the trigger. "Come out," she said, her voice low, firm. "Now." Nothing. Her pulse quickened. Whoever was here didn't want to be found, or maybe they wanted her to think that. She took a single step forward. The floor creaked. She hated that it did. Every sound she made felt too loud, too revealing. And then another sound, different, small, high-pitched. Not boots, not gear. A whimper. Her chest tightened. That wasn't an enemy. That was something else. Slowly, Elena edged down the corridor. Her weapon stayed raised, but her eyes shifted, scanning for the smallest flicker of movement. The sound came again, softer now, like it regretted being born. She found the source at the end of the hallway. A storage room, its door ajar, light spilling faintly from within. She braced herself, then nudged the door wider with her boot. And there, huddled between boxes of rations and crates of unused equipment, was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 12. Dirt smeared his cheeks, his knees pulled tight to his chest. He flinched when her shadow stretched across the room. Her throat locked. A child here, alone. He stared at her with wide, terrified eyes, lips trembling but silent. He didn't move, didn't speak, only stared, as if trying to measure whether she was salvation or something far worse. Elena lowered her weapon slightly. "It's okay," she said softly, her voice breaking against the weight of the moment. "I'm not here to hurt you." The boy didn't respond. Her mind raced. How had he survived? Why was he here when the base was deserted? And more importantly, who had left him behind? She crouched slowly, keeping her distance but lowering herself to his eye level. "Hey," she whispered. "My name, Elena. What's yours?" His lips parted. No sound came, only a small shake of his head, almost imperceptible. Mute or too afraid to speak. She glanced at his hands. They clutched something, a crumpled piece of paper. She tilted her head. "Can I see that?" The boy's grip tightened. He shook his head again, his small frame trembling. Elena softened her voice further. "It's okay. You can keep it. I won't take it." Slowly, carefully, she holstered her weapon. Both hands now open, empty, resting on her knees. "See, nothing. I'm not your enemy." The boy blinked. His breathing slowed, though his eyes still darted sharp with fear. And that's when Elena noticed it, the faint bruise on his temple, the dirt embedded in his skin, the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin. This child had seen something. Her stomach sank. She wanted to ask, needed to ask, but before she could, a sound split the air, sharp, distant, metallic. Gunfire. One shot, then silence again. Elena froze, her body tensed, her instincts screaming. That shot hadn't been for her. It hadn't been for the boy. It had been a signal. Her heart thudded. They weren't alone. The boy flinched at the sound, pressing himself deeper into the shadows of the storage room. His small fists clenched around that crumpled paper like it was the last piece of the world he had left. Elena's hand returned to her sidearm, her jaw set. She whispered quickly, "Stay here. Do not move." His eyes widened, pleading. She forced a thin, steady smile, though her insides twisted. "I'll come back, I promise." She turned and slipped back into the corridor, every step deliberate, every sense burning alive. The shot had come from outside, somewhere beyond the fence line. She moved swiftly, staying low, her ears straining for another sound. But none came. Instead, she found something worse. At the north gate, where the base's perimeter once stood strong, the fence was cut. Clean, precise. Someone had come through recently. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't abandonment. This was infiltration. She crouched near the cut wires, brushing her fingers against the sharp edges, still warm from the friction. Whoever had sliced through had done it within the last hour, maybe less. Which meant they were here, inside the base, watching her. Her chest tightened. She thought of the boy, of the case still sitting on the table, of the promise she had made. And then she thought of the figure she'd glimpsed earlier, slipping into the shadows. Had it been them, or someone else? The questions spiraled, but she forced herself to stay grounded. Control what you can, protect what matters. She rose slowly, her gaze sweeping the barren yard. The night stretched wide and heavy, the floodlights casting halos against the fog that had begun to roll in from the hills. And then a movement. Far across the yard, just beyond the edge of the light, a silhouette stood, tall, still, watching. Her hand gripped her weapon tighter. "Show yourself," she called, her voice cutting through the fog. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it turned and vanished into the darkness. Her breath caught. She wanted to chase, to confront whatever shadow played this game, but the boy's face flashed in her mind. The case, the promise. She couldn't leave them unguarded. So she turned back, moving quickly through the corridors until she reached the command room again. The case was still there, untouched. Relief washed over her, but only briefly. Because the boy was not. The storage room was empty. Her chest collapsed. No. She spun, scanning the hall, listening. Nothing. He was gone. Her heart pounded as she retraced her steps, searching corners, calling out softly, "Kid. Hey, it's me, you're safe, come back." No answer. Only silence. And then she saw it. a single slip of paper lying on the floor where he had once sat. Her hands shook as she picked it up. It wasn't the crumpled page he had clutched, it was something else. A drawing. Childlike, messy. 3 figures, one tall, 2 small. A sun above them, smiles on their faces. Family. Her throat closed. On the back, in faint pencil marks, words scratched in a trembling hand. They're coming. Elena stared at the message until her vision blurred. Her reflection stared back in the dim light, her jaw set, her chest tight. The boy was gone, the base was compromised, and the silence, it wasn't waiting anymore. It was closing in. How do you protect 2 promises at once? Elena stood frozen in the corridor, the drawing trembling in her hand. Her mind churned, torn between the case she had sworn to protect and the boy who had just vanished into the night. One was a duty, the other, something else, something that dug deeper than orders. Her fingers traced the crude pencil lines of the child's family. Smiles, a son, innocence scrawled in a place where innocence had no business surviving. And on the back, they're coming. Her chest rose quick and shallow. Whoever they were, the boy knew. He had seen them. Maybe he had been running from them all along. And now he was alone, out there in a base that was no longer theirs. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe. Choices, always choices. The case still sat in the command room, cold and silent, a weight that could shift the balance of everything if it fell into the wrong hands. But the boy, she remembered his eyes, the way they pleaded, even when his lips stayed locked in silence. She whispered almost to herself, "God help me." Her boots struck the ground softly as she moved back into the command room. She crouched low, unlatching the case. The metal clasps clicked open, sharp, final. Inside, cushioned in foam, sat a single hard drive. Black, unmarked, innocent in appearance, but everything in her body told her it was far from it. She reached for it, then stopped. Not yet. Instead, she snapped the case shut and slid it under the table, out of sight. She pulled a chair against it, a small barrier in case anyone stumbled in. It wasn't perfect, but time was a luxury she didn't have. Her decision was made. She would find the boy. She checked her weapon, tightened her vest, steadied her breathing. Every step now carried more than her own life. The hallways pressed against her as she moved, their walls whispering with memory. Names scribbled on whiteboards, posters curling at the edges, boots still lined neatly by bunks that would never again be filled. The air carried the faint sting of bleach, as if someone had tried to erase what had happened here but hadn't succeeded. Her ears strained for any sound. And they're faint, fragile. Footsteps. Not heavy, not measured like a soldier. Light, uneven, the shuffle of small shoes against concrete. The boy. Her chest surged. She followed quickly but carefully, her body pressed low, her breath caught between urgency and fear. The footsteps led her toward the mess hall. The door was ajar, swinging slightly with the draft. She pushed it open. The room was empty, tables overturned, chairs scattered, plates still set where they had been left, a place that once rang with voices now echoing only with silence. And in the corner, on the wall near the kitchen entrance, a mark. A handprint small, smudged in dirt. She rushed toward it, her fingers brushing the cold surface. It was fresh. He had been here. "Elena," she whispered under her breath, grounding herself. "You're close." But before she could move further, another sound pierced the air. Not footsteps this time. A voice. Low, male, speaking in a language she didn't immediately recognize. Her blood chilled. She ducked low, pressing herself against the wall, peering through the cracked doorway into the kitchen. 3 figures stood inside, armed, their rifles slung loosely, their gear worn but lethal, their faces hidden under balaclavas. One of them spoke again, sharp, commanding. Another replied with a nervous chuckle. The third leaned against the counter, idly cleaning the barrel of his weapon. Elena's stomach clenched. Infiltrators. She counted their movements, memorizing the rhythm of their voices. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for another presence. And there, near the far wall, the boy, crouched behind a stack of crates, his body small, trembling, eyes wide with terror. Her pulse pounded. He had hidden well, but not well enough. One wrong sound, one careless move, and they would see him. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't storm in. 3 armed men against her would be suicide, and if she fired, the boy would be caught in the crossfire. She needed another way. Her eyes caught on the pipes running along the ceiling, the old industrial lines that fed into the stoves. She remembered the schematics. She remembered the warnings about pressure valves. Her gaze shifted to the counter, a fire extinguisher, within reach if she could draw them away. Her heart hammered as the plan stitched itself together, risky, imperfect, but all she had. She slipped her knife from its sheath, her movements silent. She pulled a small shard of glass from the floor and tossed it gently down the opposite hallway. The shatter rang sharp. The men froze. One barked an order, another moved to investigate. Elena seized the moment. She slipped inside, crouching low, her body shadowing the boy's hiding place. His eyes flicked to her, wide with shock, but she pressed a finger to her lips. His breathing hitched. He stayed silent. She pointed to the far door, mouthing the words, "Go, quiet." His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. As he moved, Elena rose slowly, gripping the fire extinguisher. She waited until one of the remaining men shifted his stance, his back to her. Then she struck. The extinguisher slammed into his skull with a dull crack. He collapsed before he could cry out. The second man spun, weapon raising, but Elena had already squeezed the handle. A burst of white foam erupted, blinding, choking. The man cursed, firing blindly into the ceiling as Elena shoved past him, dragging the boy toward the door. Bullets tore through tiles, glass shattered, alarms screamed. But they made it through. The boy stumbled, but Elena pulled him along, her body shielding his. They raced down the hall, the echo of boots pounding behind them. Her lungs burned, her heart thundered. "Keep moving," she hissed, her voice sharp but steady. The boy's legs wobbled, but he didn't stop. His small hand clutched hers with desperate force. They turned corner after corner until the base's back storage wing loomed. She pushed him inside, slamming the door behind them. The room was dark, dust hanging in the air. Old crates, empty barrels. For a moment they breathed in silence. Elena dropped to her knees, gripping his shoulders. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head violently, though his chest heaved with terror. She exhaled, relief flooding her veins. "Good, you did good." His lip quivered, his eyes glistened, and for the first time he whispered a single word. "Daniel." Her breath caught. His voice was small, raw, like it hadn't been used in days. "Elena," she whispered back, her throat tight. "My name is Elena." His fingers still clutched the crumpled drawing. He held it up to her with trembling hands. "They took them." Her chest cracked. "His family." Her eyes burned, but she forced herself steady. She brushed his hair back gently, her voice breaking. "Then we're not letting them take you too." But before the promise could root, the door rattled. Voices shouted, boots struck the floor. They had been found. Elena's eyes darted around the storage room. One door, no windows. Trapped. Her heart raced, her mind clawing for options. And then she saw it, a maintenance hatch in the floor, half buried under old crates. Her hands flew, shoving boxes aside, ripping the cover free. A narrow tunnel gaped below, lined with pipes, crawling with shadows. She gripped Daniel's arm. "Go now." His eyes widened with fear, but she pushed him gently. "Trust me." The door banged again, harder this time. Splinters flew. Daniel dropped into the hatch. Elena followed, pulling the cover shut above them just as the door burst open. Boots stormed in, voices cursed. And in the dark, Elena and Daniel crawled, their breaths harsh, their hands scraping against rust and dirt. The tunnel stretched ahead, narrow, suffocating, endless. And for the first time, Elena felt the full weight of it. She was no longer carrying just a case. She was carrying a life. And maybe, just maybe, her own redemption. What do you cling to when the dark closes in? The tunnel pressed against them, narrow and suffocating. Elena crawled on hands and knees, her weapon slung awkwardly, her elbows scraping against rusted pipes. Every breath came thick with dust and decay. The air tasted like iron. Behind her, Daniel's small breaths echoed, too quick, too shallow. He was scared, but he didn't cry out. He stayed close, his hand sometimes brushing her boot as if to remind himself she hadn't disappeared. The floor above groaned faintly. Heavy boots moved across the storage room. Voices barked in harsh tones. The infiltrators hadn't left. They were searching. Elena paused, holding her breath. She pressed her ear against the metal pipe running above her head, listening. Vibrations hummed faintly. The sound of footsteps traveled through steel clearer than air. They were still sweeping the base. She motioned to Daniel, whispering low, barely audible, "Keep quiet. We don't stop unless we have to." His wide eyes met hers. He nodded, silent. They pressed on. The tunnel bent sharply left, then dipped downward. Elena's knees burned, her palms raw. She forced herself forward, every muscle taut, every sense stretched thin. But it wasn't just the infiltrators that haunted her now. It was the case she had left behind. Her chest tightened. She could still feel its weight against her palms, the cold metal pressing into her skin. She had walked miles, carried it through fire and death, promised a dying man it would not fall into enemy hands. And then she had left it. Her throat ached. She knew why she had done it, the boy, his eyes, his trembling voice saying his name like it was a fragile truth. Daniel. She couldn't abandon him, not like so many others had been abandoned before. But now the case sat unguarded, surrounded by men who had already cut through fences, infiltrated the base, taken lives. She whispered to herself, so quietly Daniel wouldn't hear, "God, don't let me have made the wrong choice." The tunnel stretched endless. Her arms trembled, her breath ragged. Daniel's breathing grew louder behind her. He stumbled once, scraping his knee. He whimpered, then bit it back, pressing forward without complaint. Her chest swelled with something sharp, pride, sorrow, guilt, all braided together. Finally, a faint glow shimmered ahead, a grate, an exit. Elena crawled faster, pressing her face against the cold bars. The night peered back at her, moonlight washing over sand and broken asphalt. But as she looked closer, her stomach dropped. Boots. Two men stood near the grate, rifles slung lazily, their voices low. Guards. They had anticipated this escape. Elena's mind spun. She motioned Daniel back, pressing a finger to her lips. His small body froze. She pressed her ear closer, listening. Their words came faint, broken by accent and static from radios clipped to their vests. She couldn't catch it all, but she caught enough. The case, command room, orders are to hold until. Her heart sank. They had found it. The case was no longer safe. Her eyes closed briefly, grief pressing heavy against her ribs. She had failed. But she opened them again. The boy was still watching her, waiting for her lead. She couldn't let him see her break. Not here, not now. She scanned the grate. The bolts were rusted, corroded. With enough force she could pry it open, but the noise, it would give them away. Her gaze dropped to her sidearm. One magazine left. 9 rounds, not enough to fight her way through if more came. Her pulse thundered. She leaned close to Daniel, whispering directly into his ear. "Listen carefully. We're not going through here. Too dangerous. We go back, find another way." His lips trembled, but he nodded, trusting her. She turned, leading him deeper into the tunnels, away from the light, away from the guards. The darkness thickened again. The air pressed heavier, as if the earth itself resented their intrusion. And then faint, a new sound. Water, dripping somewhere ahead. Elena crawled faster, hope threading through her exhaustion. Where there was water, there might be an outlet, a drainage ditch, a runoff pipe, something that led beyond the base's walls. But the sound grew louder, stranger, not just dripping now, flowing, rushing faintly. They reached another grate, this one older, bent at the corners. Moonlight shimmered through it, reflecting against water trickling below. Beyond it stretched open land, hills etched in silver under the night sky. Freedom! Elena gripped the grate, her muscles straining. Rust cracked under her fingers. She pulled harder, gritting her teeth, the metal groaning in protest. Finally it gave. The grate clattered softly onto the dirt outside. She winced at the sound, every nerve screaming it was too loud. But no voices followed. No boots pounded overhead. She motioned Daniel forward. He scrambled through, his small body slipping easily into the open air. Elena followed, dragging herself out, the cool night hitting her face like a blessing. For a moment they just breathed. The sky stretched wide above them, stars scattered like promises too far to touch. The air carried the scent of dust and sagebrush, cleaner than the recycled staleness underground. But the moment shattered quick. A flare arced into the sky from the direction of the base, red, burning. A signal. Her stomach twisted. They knew someone had escaped. Daniel's hand clutched hers tightly. His eyes searched hers, pleading. Elena squeezed back, steady, unyielding. We keep moving. No noise, no light, just follow me. They slipped into the hills, weaving through shadows, their bodies pressed low. Every rustle of brush, every crunch of gravel felt like it could betray them. Minutes blurred into an hour, maybe more. Elena's body screamed with fatigue, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Finally, they reached a ridge overlooking the base. From here, she could see the floodlights, the cut fences, the movement of armed men sweeping through buildings. And in the command room, faint but visible, a glow, screens lit, figures moved inside. Her throat clenched. They had it. The case. She stared, her chest hollowing. Everything she had carried, everything she had promised, now in their hands. Daniel's small voice broke the silence. What is it? She looked down at him. His eyes were tired, rimmed with fear, but steady. He deserved the truth. It's something dangerous, she whispered, her voice heavy. Something they can't be allowed to use. He swallowed hard. Can you stop them? Her eyes burned. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to give him hope, but the truth clawed too deep. I don't know. His hand tightened on hers, small, fragile, and yet it steadied her more than any weapon ever had. She looked back at the base, her jaw set. She couldn't leave it. She couldn't walk away. Not when she had sworn a dying man. Not when Daniel's family and countless others might pay the price. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her voice came sharp, certain. We're going back. Daniel's eyes widened. But... No, she cut in, firm but gentle. I can't leave it with them. If they use what's inside, more families will be torn apart, like yours, like mine. He blinked, silent. She realized then, she had said more than she meant to. Her family. She hadn't spoken of them in years. Not since the day she had chosen the uniform over everything else. The day the distance had grown too wide, the silence too deep. Her chest ached. She pushed it down. This wasn't about her, not anymore. She cupped Daniel's face gently, her thumb brushing the dirt on his cheek. I promise to protect you, and I will, but I also promise something else, and I have to keep both. His lips trembled, but he nodded slowly, brave despite the fear. Elena rose, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight. The base below pulsed with danger, lights sweeping like predators searching the dark. Her heart thundered, her body screamed for rest, but her soul refused to bend. She whispered, almost to herself, almost to the night. This ends tonight. Some choices crush you with their weight. Others burn so hot, they forge you into something harder. Elena stood on the ridge, eyes fixed on the base below. The fences glimmered under floodlights, patrols sweeping the perimeter with mechanical precision. Inside the command room, she could see the faint glow of monitors, and she knew the case was there, waiting, breathing like a loaded weapon. Her chest rose and fell in silence. Every instinct screamed to run, to take Daniel far from here and never look back. But that oath, the one she had given the dying man, the one written in the weight of the case itself, roared louder than fear. Behind her, Daniel shifted. His small voice broke the quiet. "Are you really going back in?" She turned, meeting his gaze. His face was pale, dirt streaked across his cheeks, but his eyes carried the same question every soldier had asked her once: is it worth it? She crouched, leveling herself to his height. "I don't want you anywhere near that place again. You hear me?" He shook his head. "I'm not leaving you." The words landed like a blow. He didn't say them like a child. He said them like someone who had already lost too much. She put a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "You'll be safer here. Hide in the rocks. Stay low. No matter what happens, don't come out until I come back." His jaw tightened. She could see the protest on his lips, but he swallowed it. Silent, obedient, but not happy. Elena forced a faint smile, though it felt brittle. "I'll be back for you, I swear it." She rose, her body heavy but her resolve sharp. Then, without another word, she slid down the ridge, swallowed by shadow. The outer perimeter was alive with motion. Guards paced steadily, rifles ready, radios crackling faint bursts of coded chatter. Drones buzzed faintly above, scanning arcs of ground with sweeping beams. Elena kept low, every step measured, her breathing slow and silent. Her hands trembled slightly from fatigue, but she forced them steady. At the fence line she crouched, studying the breach they had cut earlier. It was patched now with crude wire and a makeshift motion sensor blinking faint red. They weren't sloppy. Her gaze shifted higher to the drainage pipe, narrow, rusted, but unguarded. She pressed her lips thin. "So we go in dirty." She slid into the muck, crawling again. The smell of rot and stagnant water clung to her, coating her skin, filling her nostrils. She pressed forward, teeth gritted. Above, the floodlights swept, missing her by feet. Minutes stretched, each one tighter than the last. Finally, she emerged inside the outer wall, crouched in the shadow of a storage building. She froze. Two guards stood nearby, rifles across their chests, talking in hushed tones. Too close. Her pulse spiked. She checked her pistol, 1 magazine, 9 rounds, not enough to waste. So she waited, silent, patient. The first guard shifted, stepping a few feet away to light a cigarette. The second followed, just enough. Elena moved, a shadow sliding between shadows. She pressed against the wall, slipped past the corner, and vanished before their eyes could adjust. Her body screamed for rest, but she didn't stop. Each second here was a borrowed one. The command room loomed ahead, bright, alive, crawling with men who didn't belong. Through the glass she could see them, 5, maybe 6. They circled the table where the case sat, its black surface gleaming under harsh light. One man leaned close, examining it with a kind of hunger. His uniform wasn't standard issue, darker, unmarked. Not a soldier, a contractor, a scavenger in war's clothing. Elena's jaw clenched. She needed to get inside, but storming the room was suicide. Her eyes darted, searching. A vent above the room, narrow but large enough to crawl through. She studied the angles. It led directly above the table. It wasn't a way in, it was a way to listen. She climbed, fingers burning against the metal rungs of the maintenance ladder. Each pull felt like lifting the weight of her entire life. But she made it, crawling into the vent, the air stale and thick with dust. She inched forward until the voices below sharpened, words spilling clear. Command says extraction at dawn. Helicopter inbound. They want the case intact. Elena's blood went cold. Helicopter. If they got airborne, there'd be no stopping them. Another voice, deeper, confident. What's inside, they never tell us. The leader, the one in darker gear, chuckled low. Doesn't matter. All we need to know is it's worth more than your life. And mine. So we hold until sunrise. Silence followed, heavy. The case hummed faintly with importance, its presence like gravity in the room. Elena closed her eyes. She had hours, hours to decide. But hours weren't guaranteed, not in war. She slipped back through the vent, silent as shadow. Her mind raced, her body trembling with fatigue. She couldn't face them head-on. Not 6 men, not with a pistol nearly empty. She needed misdirection. She needed chaos. Back near the storage buildings, she found what she was searching for: fuel drums. Half empty, leaking faint fumes into the air. And beside them, old wiring spools. Her lips pressed thin, crude, dangerous, but it could work. She rigged it fast, her hands steady despite the ache. Fuel poured, wires stripped, sparks waiting for a signal. She crouched back, pistol raised, and fired once. The bullet struck the wiring, igniting a flash. The explosion ripped the night open. Fire roared high, smoke billowing. Shouts erupted across the base, boots pounding, radios screaming orders. The infiltrators swarmed toward the fire, rifles raised, barking commands. The command room emptied, 3 men rushing to investigate, another dragged by instinct. 2 left. Elena's body surged forward before her mind caught up. She slipped through the chaos, pressing into the command building, every nerve lit. The room stood nearly empty. Only the leader and 1 guard remained, both startled, caught mid-motion. She fired once, twice. The guard collapsed, a thud against the table. The leader spun, his weapon snapping up, too fast, too precise. The shot rang, grazing her arm, tearing fire through her muscle. She staggered, teeth gritted against the scream clawing her throat. But she fired back. The bullet slammed into his vest, staggering him. Not fatal, but enough to drop him to his knees. Elena lunged forward, slamming her shoulder into him, driving him against the wall. Her pistol clattered away. His hands reached for her throat, strong, brutal. Her vision darkened, edges closing. She clawed at his grip, her lungs burning, body trembling. Her knee drove upward, sharp, desperate. He faltered. She broke free, seizing the edge of the table. Her hand slammed the case forward, its corner smashing into his skull. He dropped, blood streaking the floor, still breathing but out. Elena staggered, chest heaving, blood slicking her sleeve. Her gaze fell on the case, still sealed, still humming with its silent weight. She pressed her hand against it, her breath shuddering. "Not tonight," she whispered. But voices thundered outside, boots rushing back, alerted by gunfire. No time. She grabbed the case, its weight nearly buckling her arms. She slung it against her chest, teeth clenched, and bolted for the back exit. The fire outside roared higher, shadows dancing wild. Men shouted, the air thick with smoke and confusion. Elena disappeared into it, a ghost with her burden. When she finally reached the ridge again, Daniel was waiting. His face lit when he saw her, but then froze when he saw the blood. "Elena," he rushed forward, panic flooding his voice. "You're hurt." She dropped to one knee, catching his shoulder with her good hand. "I'm fine." Her breath shook. "We don't have long, we move now." His eyes darted to the case, wide. "That's it, isn't it?" She nodded once, no words left. Behind them the base burned. Sirens wailed, searchlights cut through smoke, and chaos spread like wildfire. But Elena and Daniel slipped into the dark hills, the case between them, the night holding its breath. And for the first time she realized she wasn't carrying this weight alone. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but the desert sky was lightening. That fragile hour when the stars surrendered to gray and the horizon waited for the sun. Elena's boots struck hard earth, her breath sharp and shallow. Each step sent a pulse of fire through her wounded arm, blood soaking the sleeve, sticky against her skin. The case pressed heavy against her chest, every ounce a reminder. You chose this. Daniel stumbled beside her, his smaller legs struggling to keep pace. She glanced at him, sweat streaked his temples, dust clung to his lips, but his jaw was clenched. He didn't complain. He didn't ask to stop. Still she slowed. Breathe, we'll move smarter, not faster. He nodded, gasping, but kept going. Behind them the desert was alive with noise. The base burned like a beacon, smoke curling into the sky. Engines roared. Lights swept across the darkness. The hunt had begun. Every ridge felt the same. Rocks, sand, dry scrub. A landscape built to betray you, open, endless, nowhere to hide. Elena pushed them toward a ravine, narrow enough to swallow their shadows. The walls closed in, the air tighter, the silence deeper. Daniel broke it first. You could have left me. She turned sharply. His voice wasn't small this time, it was flat, matter of fact. I told you, she said, I don't leave people behind. But I'm slowing you down. Her breath caught. For a moment she saw another face, her younger brother, barely older than Daniel, saying the same thing years ago on a patrol that went wrong. And she hadn't been fast enough then. Not enough. Not there when it mattered. Her throat tightened. She forced herself back. You're not slowing me down, she said firmly. You're the reason I'm still moving. Daniel blinked, startled, then looked away, embarrassed. But she saw his shoulders straighten. The rumble came minutes later, low, mechanical, growing. Engines. Elena shoved Daniel against the rock wall, crouching low, pulling him into her shadow. She pressed a hand over his back, steadying him. Above, a convoy of trucks rolled by, headlights cutting the dark, tires grinding over sand. Men shouted over radios, rifles slung across their chests. One man stood in the back of the lead truck, scanning the horizon with binoculars. His silhouette was sharp, certain. Elena froze, hardly breathing. The convoy passed. Dust filled the ravine, stinging her throat. Only when the sound faded did she let her lungs release. But Daniel turned his face up, whispering, "They'll keep looking, won't they?" She nodded once, "Until they find us, or until we make them stop." The boy's lips pressed thin, no more words. They kept moving, slower now. Her body ached, her wound burned, but her mind stayed sharp. She replayed the words she had heard in the vent. Helicopter inbound, dawn. Extraction was coming. The case couldn't leave the ground. If it did, the fight was lost before it began. Her choices narrowed to a blade's edge. She couldn't run forever. She couldn't outpace helicopters. She needed allies. She needed a message out. Her hand slipped into her pocket, brushing the cracked radio. Static hissed faintly. Range was short, the battery dying. But maybe, just maybe. "Elena," she whispered to herself, "you're gambling everything." She raised the radio, speaking low. "This is Blackbird, if anyone's listening, copy. Priority 1, I have the package." Static empty. She tried again. "Repeat, this is Blackbird, package secured. Hostile forces inbound with air support. Coordinates," her voice wavered. "Coordinates, hell, I don't even know where we are." She lowered the radio, jaw clenched. Daniel watched her. No one's listening. She forced a tight smile. They will. But inside, doubt clawed. What if no one came? What if she carried all this weight for nothing? The horizon began to glow faint gold. Dawn stretched its fingers, pulling shadows thin. Elena's heart sank. The dark had been their shield. Now it betrayed them. And then she heard it, the distant chop, the sound that made every soldier's stomach twist. Helicopter blades. Daniel froze, his eyes wide. They're here. Elena scanned the sky. The sound grew louder, nearer, until black specks appeared against the pale horizon. Two helicopters, their rotors carving the air, their searchlights slicing across the desert floor. Her grip on the case tightened. They were running out of ground. She grabbed Daniel's hand. Move. They sprinted, feet pounding, lungs burning. Rocks tore at their boots, sand slipping underfoot. The helicopters roared closer, lights sweeping. A beam slashed across the ravine, blinding white. Voices boomed over loudspeakers, distorted by the roar. Orders barked in a language Daniel didn't understand, but Elena did. Stop. Drop the case. Or die. Her teeth clenched. She pulled Daniel behind a boulder, pressing him down. Her chest heaved, sweat stinging her eyes. The helicopters hovered now, the ground vibrating under their force. Shadows of men dangled from ropes, fast roping down, rifles at the ready. Elena's breath shook. Too many, too fast. She looked at Daniel. His eyes were wide, terrified but steady. He wasn't crying. He wasn't pleading. He was waiting for her choice. Her heart cracked under the weight. She had promised the dying man. She had promised herself. She had promised Daniel. And now all those promises collided. Her hand brushed the pistol at her side. One magazine, 6 rounds left, not enough. But maybe. She glanced at the case, then at the fuel-soaked rag she'd shoved into her pack back at the base. Crude, reckless, but possible. Her lips trembled. Sometimes you don't keep a promise by holding on. Sometimes you keep it by letting go. Daniel frowned, not understanding. She pressed the case into his hands. If I don't make it out, you run. You find someone who will listen. You make sure they know this matters. He shook his head violently. No, I'm not leaving you. She grabbed his face, her voice breaking. Daniel, listen to me. You're stronger than you think. You carry this forward, promise me. Tears filled his eyes, but he nodded, choking. I promise. The helicopters circled closer. Boots thudded against sand. Men shouted. The hunt had closed. Elena rose, case in hand. And for the first time since this began, she wasn't afraid of the weight. She was afraid of what she'd have to do with it. And in the rising light of dawn, she stepped out from behind the rock, the desert wide open, the enemy waiting. The desert held its breath. Elena stood in the open, the case pressed tight against her chest, the wind tugging at her blood-soaked sleeve. The helicopters loomed above like predators, their rotors ripping the silence apart. Dust swirled in violent circles, the air alive with noise, light, and menace. Men dropped from the ropes, boots slamming the ground, rifles snapping to their shoulders. They spread in formation, efficient, merciless. A voice boomed through the loudspeaker, sharp and cold. Put it down, now. Elena didn't move. Her heart thundered. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to fight. But she stood rooted, her body a wall between the case and the men. Behind the rock, Daniel crouched low, his small fingers gripping the stone until his knuckles went white. His chest heaved. He wanted to scream, to run to her, but her last command pinned him still. Elena raised her voice, forcing it through the roar. You can kill me, but you'll never have what's inside. The reply came quick. You don't understand what you carry. Her jaw clenched. I understand enough. A pause, then the voice softened, oily. It's not yours to protect, it's bigger than you, bigger than your war, don't die for nothing. Her throat tightened. She thought of the soldier who had pressed the case into her hands, bleeding out in her arms. She thought of the look in his eyes, the trust, the desperate plea. Promise me. And she thought of Daniel, alone, orphaned, already forced to bear too much. Was this really bigger than her, bigger than all of them? Her mind whirled, but her body stayed steady. The soldiers advanced, slow, rifles raised. She counted them, 10, maybe more hidden in the light. She had 6 rounds, a pistol against a storm. Her hand brushed the fuel-soaked rag in her pack, the crude weapon she had made in the fire's shadow, her last card. If she lit it, there would be no case, no secrets, nothing for anyone. But also no redemption. Her chest heaved. torn between duty and defiance. The loudspeaker barked again. Last chance, drop it. Her fingers dug into the case's handle. Her arm throbbed. Her eyes burned. And then a memory. Not of war, not of orders, but of her brother, 12 years old, running down the street with a kite, laughing as the wind fought him. He had looked back at her then, his grin wide, shouting, "Don't let go." That memory cut deep now. She whispered so low only the wind could hear, "I won't." The soldiers surged. Elena moved, fast, desperate. She pulled the rag free, struck her lighter, and flame caught. Fire roared along the cloth, hungry and bright. She raised the case high, the burning rag dangling inches from it. The soldiers froze, rifles aimed but fingers hesitant. The loudspeaker crackled, anger and panic entwined. You don't know what you're doing." Sweat poured down her face. The flame licked closer. Her arm trembled under the weight. And she realized this was the power she held, not in the gun, not in her training. In the choice. Her voice cut through the roar, raw and sharp. "Step back, or it all ends here." For a heartbeat, the desert went still. Even the helicopters seemed to hover, uncertain. And in that silence, Daniel's whisper slipped out from behind the rock. "Elena." Her chest cracked at the sound. She couldn't look back. If she did, she'd fall apart. So she kept her eyes forward, the fire burning close, the dawn spilling gold across the horizon. Then a shot. Sharp, sudden, a spark burst near her foot, kicking sand, a warning. Her grip faltered, the flame dipped closer. Shouts erupted, orders screamed. The soldiers advanced again, faster now. Elena's heart raced. She couldn't hold them off forever, couldn't bluff against bullets. Her mind screamed two words, "Not yet." She hurled the flaming rag into the sand, stamping it out fast, killing the fire before it touched the case. Gasps rippled through the soldiers, confusion. And in that moment, she did the only thing left. She ran. Bullets tore the ground behind her, sharp cracks splitting the air. Daniel scrambled from his hiding place, eyes wide, and she grabbed his hand mid-sprint. "Go," she shouted, dragging him, lungs burning, legs screaming. The helicopters swung low, searchlights cutting the earth into white scars. Voices thundered over radios, furious, relentless. But the desert wasn't empty. Ahead, jagged cliffs, stone teeth rising from the sand, black against dawn. Elena's chest heaved, a chance. She pulled Daniel harder, forcing her body past breaking. Almost there. The soldiers chased, boots pounding, rifles spitting fire. Bullets sparked off stone, hissed past her ears. The cliffs loomed closer, shadows deeper, cracks wide enough to vanish into. They dove inside, scrambling through narrow cuts, the world behind them chaos. Elena pressed her back against the rock, chest heaving, Daniel trembling at her side. The helicopters roared overhead, lights slicing but missing them in the stone maze. For now, her wound screamed, her body trembled, but she held the case still sealed. Daniel looked at her, face pale, voice breaking. "You almost blew it up." Her eyes closed, tears threatening. "I almost did." "Why didn't you?" She opened them, staring at the sunrise painting the desert blood orange. Her voice came low, heavy. "Because it has to mean something. Otherwise, all this is just noise." Daniel swallowed hard, his small hand gripping hers. His eyes searched her face, and for the first time he didn't look like a child. He looked like someone carrying the same weight she did. Above, the helicopters circled, relentless. The hunt wasn't over. But for now, in the cracks of stone, Elena and Daniel had stolen another breath, another chance. And dawn, cruel and beautiful, burned across the desert, marking the beginning of the end. Why did no one follow her out of the bunker? The silence stretched, heavy as stone, after the last echoes of the fight faded. The air smelled of metal and blood, scorched powder lingering where flames had once licked the walls. She stepped out into the courtyard, boots crunching over gravel, each sound magnified in the stillness. The weapon in her hands felt lighter now, though its weight had nearly crushed her when the night began. She stopped. The sky above was pale, the kind of dawn that looked fragile as if it might shatter with a breath. Her chest rose and fell. For the first time in hours, she realized she wasn't bracing for another shot, another scream, another shadow slipping through the dark. The base, the same base she had walked into holding the thing that changed everything, was finally quiet. Her knees weakened, but she didn't let herself fall. Not yet. The others deserved more than collapse. She looked at the flag half torn above the gates, swaying in the breeze. A thought pressed into her mind. Did I keep my promise? That promise, made long before the mission, whispered to someone who would never see her again, was what had carried her through. It wasn't about orders. It wasn't about rank. It was about dignity. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't demand recognition. The kind that carries you forward when no one else will. The door behind her creaked. A figure emerged, limping, face pale but alive. Another followed. Their eyes met hers, wordless, raw with gratitude. She almost looked away, not wanting them to see how broken she truly felt inside. But they held her in their gaze as if her silence had been louder than any command. She lowered the weapon, slowly, deliberately. The courtyard wind whispered across the base, carrying the faintest scent of dust and earth. In that quiet, something settled deep inside her. Sometimes victory doesn't roar. It doesn't raise its fists or declare triumph. Sometimes victory is nothing more than the breath that still fills your lungs, the chance to walk away, the memory of the ones who couldn't. She stood taller, though her body trembled. The dawn grew brighter, painting the concrete walls with gold. And in that fragile light, she knew, history would never tell the story exactly as it happened. They would edit, polish, forget. But the truth would live in the silence between her steps, in the quiet dignity of those who carried more than they ever admitted. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.